Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I am reviving my 5 faves video. It's been a really long time since I made one of these and I just kind of missed it. And I've been filming a lot of content that's been quite similar recently, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a 5 faves. This is inspired by Space Iron's book club. For our June book, we decided that we were going to choose an underrated gem. So all of us nominated books that had less than, I think it was less than 4,000 ratings on Goodreads. I can't remember exactly. And I had a really hard time picking what to suggest. I was looking through both my TBR and my books that I've read and trying to find some books that I thought sounded really good that had really low number of ratings, and there were just so many to choose from. So I ended up nominating for that one book that I'd read and loved and one book that I really wanted to read. Usually we only nominate one book, but they let me nominate 2 this time because I just couldn't pick between them. And actually both of them made it through our initial nominations through to the Twitter poll, and then actually the one that I'd read before won. So I'm going to mention that one briefly. It didn't actually make it onto this list for reasons that I will go into, but that book that inspired this list is The Stolen Kingdom by Bethany Atazadeh. So this is our June pick for the Space Iron's book club, and I'm so excited because I really love this series. I'm really pleased to be forcing other people to read it. Yeah, if you want to know more or maybe join in with reading that for our book club, we have on our Space Iron's Discord, we have a channel for each book that we read to book club for people to talk about them. Some months that's more involved than others, and then we'll also be doing a live show which will be, because it's our June book, that will be at the beginning of July. So I'll let you know all the details of that when I have them on this channel. For me it'll be a reread. I'll be rereading that, and then I'll probably actually reread the second and third books because the fourth book has just come out, and while it's fairly recently that I read the second and third books, I'm actually like, it'll be really nice to reread the whole series before finishing it off. So yeah, really excited to be promoting that book. So I'm going to go on to 5 faves that I've picked from my read list on Goodreads, and these are all books that have less than 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. So The Stolen Kingdom does fit in with that, but because I had so many to choose from and I was really struggling, I decided on this list to just limit it to books that I gave 5 stars to, which I actually only gave The Stolen Kingdom 4 stars, which really surprised me when I double checked. The Stolen Kingdom had 710 ratings on Goodreads, which is just not enough because it's a brilliant book and a brilliant series. The rest of these books have various amounts of ratings, so I think I'm going to go through them from the order of most ratings through to least ratings, and it's a mixture of different genres here. So I'm going to be talking about 5 books that I gave 5 stars to that less than 1,000 people have rated on Goodreads and that I think you should read. First one I'm going to talk about had 925 ratings, so just snuck in as being few enough to make it onto this list today. This was a book called Black Tudors. The author is Miranda Kaufmann, and it is non-fiction. It is a look at people in the Tudor era who were of African descent primarily, because it's often argued that, oh, there weren't really black people in Britain before like the end of slavery and all of this, and we don't understand our own history. So another book that goes further back in history and talks more about this is Black and British, A Forgotten History by David Olusoga, and there is some cross-reference between these 2 books. So in the chapter on that book about the Tudors, he talks about some of the same people that Miranda Kaufmann talks about, but she goes into a lot more detail about them and their lives. I think she picks 10 primary characters that she tells her stories of, but within those chapters she also talks about other people that fit into those categories. So she looks at merchants and educated people, musicians, divers, like really broad range of people of different skills and backgrounds that have been uncovered through looking into historical records of the period. And I thought this book was brilliant. I read it about a year ago now and really loved it. Thought it was a really interesting insight into parts of history that have been forgotten or overlooked, and I found it really informative and really interesting and really highly recommend it. And I think the reason I picked it up was because I saw something she said on Twitter. One of the people that she talks about, his name was Honourable Black Man, and I thought that was just such a brilliant name. So yeah, really do highly recommend. I think he was a silk merchant, I can't remember. Anyway, so I really do highly recommend that book, particularly if you're interested in history and parts of our history that have been overlooked. The next book I'm going to talk about, I'm not necessarily going to say a lot about it because it's quite a while ago I read it. So this had 555 ratings. This book was called Snake Ropes. So the author is called Jess. I read this in 2015, so it was a little while ago and I don't necessarily remember a lot about the story, but certain elements of it really stayed with me. This is a kind of fabulous tale. I think it's set on an island just off the coast of Britain, but there's a lot of magical elements woven into it. What I remember about it is that she has quite a distinctive narrative voice, so she creates kind of dialect, which is really easy to read and really understandable. If you know my channel, you know that I sometimes complain about dialects in books, but actually this was, because the whole book was told from this narrative voice with this dialect, it was really impactful. What I remember about it was that there's kind of this mystery that the main character is trying to solve to do with the disappearance of people on this island. There are people that come from the mainland and sometimes take people away, but there's also other ways that people go missing, and so she's trying to figure all of that out. I'm sure there was a house in it that has its own personality, and there's sort of other elements of British folk tales, so there's references to the Selkies, who were people that could become seals. I'm trying to remember what else to say. This is 6 years ago that I read this book. Some of it has really stayed with me, and I remember how much I enjoyed it. I don't necessarily remember all of the plot points, but then it was 6 years ago. So I think the fact that when I saw it on this list, like on my Goodreads, and I was like, I can't believe that has so few ratings, and I just really wanted to talk about it even though I don't remember a lot of it. And I think that just shows how much this book impacted me when I read it, and it's definitely one I don't have a copy. I borrowed it from the library when I read it, but it's definitely one that I do want to buy and read again at some point, just because it was just such a magical world. The world building was exquisite, and there was just so much in there that I really, really loved. So I can't tell you a lot more about it than that, but it's one that I definitely think is worth reading, and it definitely needs more people to read it and talk about it because it was just really, really good. Okay, so the next book that I'm going to talk about had 199 ratings, and this was my favourite book of 2018, I'm pretty sure, which was the year I started BookTube. This is called Chatilla Stories. This is published by Peirene Press, and it's a collection of interwoven short stories that were written by refugees within a refugee camp in Lebanon. These were primarily refugees, I believe, from Syria, but also probably from other parts of Lebanon as well, that have fled violence. Peirene sent some writers and editors over to this refugee camp to workshop with the people in the camp, some of the people in the camp, and give them the opportunities to write their stories or imaginatively retell their stories. So it is short stories, it is fictionalized, but it's based on their real experiences within this camp. So I read this in 2018. I can't necessarily tell you a lot of details about what those stories were, but I just remember the way I felt when I was reading it and how it brought to life what existence in these refugee camps was like. This was the first book I'd read from Peirene Press, and they have become one of my favourite small publishers. I have a subscription to them, and so I get every book that they publish. They publish about 3 books a year, and it's generally translated fiction. They're a really great publisher, really working to promote voices that aren't heard in UK publishing. So I highly recommend them as a publisher. I highly, highly recommend this book. If you want to understand more about refugee experience and what life is like in these refugee camps, then it's really worth a read. But if you just want some really beautifully written, impactful stories from underheard portions of the world population, then these are definitely worth reading. They're really well written, considering these were written by people that don't have a lot of experience writing. I really, really loved this book, and I can't wait to get it out of storage and reread it. The next book I'm going to talk about, it's also from an independent publisher, and I can't remember which publisher it is actually, but it was one that I got through Ninja Book Box. And so if you want to learn more about independent publishers, then definitely check out Ninja Book Box, because that's their specialty, is promoting independent publishers. So this book is called Sometimes a River Song, and the author is Avril Joy. I also read this in 2018. So again, I'm a little bit fuzzy on some of the details of the story, but I remember it's about a young woman who lives on a riverboat with her family, and they're part of quite a close-knit community of people that live on riverboats. Her father is very abusive, and she has not been allowed to have an education, so she has been secretly teaching herself to read. She also has kind of a romantic relationship with the son of another riverboat person, but for various reasons they have to keep it a secret. If I remember rightly, she's also trying to find out about her mother's history, which has been hidden from her. But that's about all I can remember. It wasn't a very long book, but it was one, again, the world building was really well done. It was really evocative. I felt I really could understand this community and this society and the very real struggles that the central character, whose name I've forgotten, that she goes through in trying to escape from the very narrow existence that she's been granted. I thought it was a really, really powerful book, and this, I think, I can't remember if I said, this only has 44 ratings on Goodreads, so it's definitely an underrated gem. It's a book that I really would love to hear more people talking about, so I'm really grateful. I got that through a Ninja Book Box summer bonus box. I'm really, really glad that I did, because I wouldn't have come across it otherwise, and it was a book that I really loved. I think it was another one that I listed in my favourites of 2018, but I can't necessarily remember. And then the final book was another one that I came across through Ninja Book Box. This was back when they did a monthly book club, which unfortunately isn't going on anymore. This one only has 15 ratings, and that's such a shame because it's such a good book. It's another short story collection, but again the stories are all linked, and it's called The Ghost Who Bled by Gregory Norminton. These are all short stories with kind of fabulous elements, or a lot of them are to do with mistaken identities or hidden identities and the impact of actions on other people. One is about an actor who has a terminal illness and how they're taking control of the end of their career. The one that the title comes from is about a Japanese pilot in the Air Force who survived when the rest of his platoon didn't, and how he is sidelined and ignored by his community because of that, because he shouldn't have survived when no one else did. I think there was one about a lookalike for a political figure and how that affects their life. Each story was so well put together. The blurb on Goodreads says a tour de force of literary world building, and I totally agree with that. I just remember each story really impacted me, and I don't think there was one in this collection that I didn't love. I just think there's so many good short stories in this collection, the different genres covered, the different places and people and periods of history. Some are futuristic, some are set back in the past, and it's just a really exquisite collection. And it only has 15 ratings, which is such a shame. This is another one from an indie publisher. Again, I found out about it through Ninja Book Box. So this one is published by Comma Press, and it's just really, really lovely, and more people should be reading it. So that was 5 underrated gems from my Goodreads read shelf. 5 books that have less than 1,000 ratings that I gave 5 stars to, that I would really love to hear more people talking about. Please do let me know if by any chance you've read any of these books. I would really love to know, because they are books that I don't hear enough people talking about. If you would like to read them based on my recommendation, then that would be great. Let me know some of your favourite books that you don't hear enough people talking about, particularly any recommendations you have of books that you've loved that have less than 1,000 ratings on Goodreads, if you use Goodreads. Otherwise, if you just want to let me know that you've been here but can't think of anything specific to say, because these are hidden gems, and because a couple of the books I've talked about people that are hidden from society, let's go for an emoji that represents hiddenness to you. So that may be like a ghostly kind of emoji, or it may be a person hiding kind of emoji, just something along those lines. I know I'm getting quite abstract in these emoji suggestions. It's just difficult to think of a different emoji type every video. But never mind. So yeah, so leave me an emoji that represents hiddenness to you in the comments if you just want to let me know you've been here, just to let me know that you've made it this far and you have enjoyed watching this video. You can also like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't already, and you can also follow me on my social media. All that information is listed for you in the description box below. But that's it for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!